Let me get my little timer started here. If I can find my phone, I'd do that. What I did with it here. And there it is. Right on schedule. I had it in that chapter he was reading about the spiritual experience. I didn't know that was going to be read. Wow. I can easily say about any time I hear something like, that's my favorite reading. That's my favorite. No, that's my favorite. And that little bit has an awful lot of highlighting and underlining from Big Book studies and new information, things drawing me in. So, well, my name's Bob McConnell, and I'm an alcoholic. And thanks to the grace of a loving God, both sides of sponsorship and the information in the book called Alcoholics Anonymous, I've been sober since April 24th of 1988, and I'm grateful about that tonight. Grateful to be asked to be here with you. I could have listened to Calvin for another 5 minutes. I was writing down everything you were saying about me, Calvin. It was beautiful. And it is amazing that there we are. You know, the COVID has kind of come and gone, and mostly gone, right? And we're still drawn back to that fellowship of the Spirit. Thank you for mentioning Bernadette. I haven't met Bernadette, but I was really glad we took time to pray and keep her in our prayers and thoughts. And we do that a lot on the Rojo group that Calvin and I attend. And back to the comment about that beautiful baby. 10 days ago, I was talking to my friends at Rojo, and I was weepy, asking them to keep my daughter in their prayers. She was had a really difficult pregnancy, just difficult. And I'm a daddy. And the baby was decided to be born 3 weeks early, and it was a whole day long event. And God, I'm so grateful for my sobriety, for things like prayer and meditation. And I don't want to ever have to fake showing up again. I was outside there in the waiting room, and I came down the hall toward her room just as they said, "We've got a new baby boy." And I don't mind working into the conversation that his name is Grant Robert. And he is beautiful. He's, here we go. There you have him. There he is. That was 8 days ago. And he's crazy about me. I've been noticing that. But anyway, that's why I was back in Iowa for a little bit. And sobriety gives me the chance to come and go and to be where I want to say the action is, sometimes where the pain is. Sobriety has stood me right up in front of life in difficult times, and I found a God big enough to go with me wherever I go. My home group is the Jaywalker group in Des Moines, Iowa. We meet on Thursday nights. I just changed home groups after about 20 years. So it's still different to say that, but it's true. I want you to know I have a home group, and it's a great group of Alcoholics Anonymous. And my sponsor is Rod Brown. And he has a sponsor, and he has a sponsor, and we believe in sponsorship. So I want to talk tonight. I'll take up a little bit of time, maybe the first 6 or 8 minutes, because I want to tell you a little bit about active alcoholism. Just to let you know, I'm not a guy that spilled a half a glass of wine on his lap to get here and give you all a nice lecture about God. I like the term, if a mere code of morals or a better philosophy of life was available, many of us had recovered a long time ago. It just wasn't effective. That has never laid a glove on me. And it certainly didn't lay a glove on my alcoholism before I got here. So I'll talk a little bit about early sobriety and God. And I'll talk to Ali sometime soon. I think I'm speaking at his home group for the speaker next month. But I love that man and what a good service he's provided here. But this is such a great exercise to do. What it's had me do, of course, is look back. And I learn a lot looking back. Life is lived forward, but I can see now, real clearly now, where God, you know, that slender thread was there all the time, right? That flimsy reed. But I can even see it and communicate about it in early sobriety because I needed help. I was hopeless and beyond human aid. I found the miracle of alcohol when I was about 15. And some of us at that age, we either find the chess club or the football team, or we find out it's adolescence. Nobody gets to go through it. And it's just, I've got a couple grandsons that just passed through that stage, and One of them's crazier than heck, and the other one's a heck of a student. And it's adolescence. I found alcohol, and it was great. I ran out the string. I'm not going to talk a lot about that. Come back and listen to my story. But I was locked on to it. By the time in my early 20s, it went from being fun to being fun with problems, and then it became problems. And in my early 20s, my beautiful grandson, I was outside the door. My first grandchild was born, and I was drunk out in the waiting room. And I'd gotten to the hospital and went in and looked at my wife in hard labor, and I took one step forward, one step back, and I was out. And her father came to the waiting room to tell me that I had a son. Sad. God, I wish some of those things wouldn't have happened. That's kind of alcoholism I got. But I was 22 or 23, and I was nowhere near stopping as I would know it. And I ran out the string into my late 20s and early 30s. And I guess maybe a sort of a prayer was already happening in my life. I was kind of in my own quiet way, not telling anybody, but I was kind of thinking, God, I just wish something would happen where I wouldn't have to drink. Because I knew I was locked on. I knew I couldn't imagine a life without it. And I was using some non-habit forming drugs to help me drink like I wanted to. And it was a game. It was just a terrible nightmare. And what happened, I thought, what's it going to be? Is it going to be a car wreck or whatever else? And God must have heard my prayer. On my last drunk, I left the house. I'd been sober 9 days because my wife was talking about kicking me out of the house, actually 11 days. And on the 12th day, I put a $100 bill in my pocket and went bowling. When I go bowling, it gets pretty drunk out. That was a Thursday. I called my wife on Sunday morning. I thought I should see how everybody was doing. And so inconsiderate. I just can't even imagine when I tell you that's the way I was living. And you know what she said? I think you ought to come home. The clothes are killing the grass. She wasn't too pleased either. And hey, when I got there, which was only about 6 blocks away, I was at my drug dealer's house. There were clothes all over the front yard. The neighbors had chairs outside, watching broad daylight. It was so embarrassing. And boy, I threw that stuff in my car. I'm overwhelmed with grief, sadness, and all of that. And I got about a half a block away from the house, and I pounded on the steering wheel, and I said, God help me. I think God pulls some of us up long before we know it's happening. And the grace would enter into my life because I went over and broke into my dad's mobile home. And then I called a bartender who I know would come by and keep me, comfortable that night. And I woke up sober the next morning. Now, maybe the AA helicopter, that spiritual helicopter, was flying around saying, oh, we'll get another one. We'll got him. And I certainly didn't look like it. But 2 days later, another miracle happened. My family did something called an intervention. Don't know if you've ever been to an intervention. It is not a fair fight. They had something called a court order. And all these people are in front of me, a couple sisters and my wife, of course, God bless her. And she had to go in and talk to people. How you doing? My best friend is the one that helped intervene on me. And it got around, they were going around. My mom was the last one. My mom had gotten sober by way of shock treatment and had the benefits of step none and about 3 years of sobriety. She was an angry woman. She was not happy to be there that morning. And I was objecting to everything everybody said. When it got around to her, she said, look, I don't think you understand. You're going to treatment. Now, the question is, are you going in slippers or handcuffs? We've got a court order. And she held up. I didn't know anything what a court order looked like, but she seemed like she was. So you know what I said? I had a spiritual awakening. I said, I've been thinking about going to treatment. I'm glad you guys did this for me. Got to make it my idea, right? And so I went into treatment. I'm 4 days sober. And, I go into this treatment. I was kind of relieved. And I went in there. It was kind of interesting for a while. And they had us do kind of a life story. And I was going to be getting together with my counselor to share it. And she was a real short gal. I didn't like her. And I was sure she didn't like me. She just seemed to kind of mean mug me all the time. And we got in this little room. My wife was in there with her in the room. And she said, Terry's asked to join us because we know that people have to start getting honest when they're in here. or they're not going to stay sober. She said she was really surprised that a couple things were left out of your life story. I thought, like, you let her read it? What the hell? And she said, you didn't mention anything in here about having a gambling operation in your home. Now, she's right, I didn't. Let's, I'm going to quit the drinking, for God's sake. But I had 6 phone lines coming into my house. My kids were not allowed downstairs. I had 2 guys that collected money from me. I was not a nice man. I did a lot of bad things to nice people, but I couldn't imagine living a lifestyle without what was a lot of money coming in. I would say tax-free, but it was taxing my soul now, I would tell you. But she said, Terry told me, now, if you knew me, if you spend any time with me anywhere, any of my friends that might be on here, I absolutely adore my children. I adore my daughters. But Terry said, my wife, she said, look, you either give up the gambling or the kids. And I stood up and I said about 10 expletives. I said, keep your effing kids. And I stormed out, got in my car and started driving back to this basement apartment I was living in that had mold in the corner. And the whole thing just kind of washed over me. They asked me to do some writing. It turned out as a 4-step. I hadn't started on that. And I thought, oh, what am I going to do? And I just kind of grabbed the steering wheel and pulled her. I said, God, please help me. I'll do anything. And I had a spiritual experience. I had a white light moment. And I drove home. I took the next day off work. I finished the 4-step thing. And I haven't taken a bet or gambled since. And I completed treatment. And I wandered out of there and I wandered around AA like a lot of people do for about 6 weeks. I was as physically sober as I am right now, 2.5 months sober, and AA wasn't laying a glove on me. I had, all the crap. And I ran into a guy going to my last meeting. I think we ought to ask that sometimes. Anybody at their last meeting? But I ran into a guy who I went to high school with. He was sitting across from me about 2 tables away, and I was at my last meeting, and I knew where the door was because I always sat close when I needed to get out. Anyway, he came around and 12-stepped me. I won't bore you with that whole story. Come back for the details. It's a miraculous story, but it was a miracle. God sent the right guy. Mike Long was sober. He was my Ebby. He was the guy in high school who said, if you ever get as bad as him, quit drinking. And he was fresh-skinned and glowing. And everybody loved him in AA. He took me around, introduced me to people I'd never met. It was an absolute miracle, though. And more importantly, Mike was armed with the facts about himself. He said, look, here's what we're going to do. He said, you're going to come over to my house and we're going to read this book. He gave me this book here. He said, you've been attending Alcoholics Anonymous. He says, AA isn't something you attend, it's something you do. Write that down. That had a profound effect on me. I'd have been attending AA. He said, AA is something you do. He said, we're going to start at the beginning of this book and we're going to do everything it says. I expect you to have a spiritual awakening and then help other men with what I'm going to, he's telling me that, he's been helping me about 10 days and I did everything he said. The first evidence of that spiritual awakening or God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself, I think it's one of the most important ones that need to happen for us. And again, all I was doing, I would say now, was cooperating with God. And it looked like Mike Long. I was doing everything he asked me to do. We were going to treatment center meetings, 10 meetings a week. It was a miracle. And I was at a Friday meeting. I was about, I just got my 3-month coin like 2 weeks before. I'm about 3.5 months sober. And a lady who I saw the Friday before came back and she said, I got drunk last night. And you know what? Here's what washed across me. Here's the question that came into my mind, the God idea. God, Bob, when was the last time you thought about drinking? I have not thought about drinking, and I didn't even know where it went. People like me need that to happen. I must have some type of an effect or an experience where first, the obsession to drink is lifted. And then later on, it says the 12 steps will help make us happily and usefully whole. I had that happen to me. That obsession has never returned. And in my description, I've been on fire for Alcoholics Anonymous ever since. Next miracle would happen for me. I was about a little over a year sober, and I was Mr. AA. I mean, it was where, I wished I'd have given out, stripes or badges or something. But now I'm on the board of directors at this little club, kind of a tough area of town, and they had meetings all the time. And I had just finished doing a Joe and Charlie workshop with my sponsor on cassette tapes. And they had talked about what Dr. Bob was told by Bill. Give him the hard medical facts. I'm thinking nonsense. I had 3 or 4 guys that were following me. the only time I'd ever mentioned that they were sponsees made me look good. I was full of ego. I was so prideful. And everybody. So I got on the board of directors at this AA club. Man, if you'd asked me how it was going, I would say I'm on the board of directors. I was just trying to look important. I was probably standing around humming a few bars of how great thou art, right? And well, what happened is somebody noticed at the Sunday night meeting that the lock wasn't working around the door. So who was on call? Bob McConnell. That phone rang and I answered. I thought, oh, Jesus, I don't want to go down there. But I probably won't look very spiritual. If I don't, they'll tell somebody I didn't go down. You know what I mean? God just does right what we need, doesn't he? But here's what the miracle happened. I got there about 20 minutes before the meeting was over, and I'm sitting in the meeting impatiently waiting for it to end. And at the end of the meeting, a guy said, hey, I'm at the YMCA and need a ride back. Who'd give me a ride? And not a hand went up. Another opportunity to look spiritual. I said, well, I'll give you a ride, make sure everybody's looking. I said, I'll give him a ride, just, oh my God, there's no end to my self-centeredness. Here's where the miracle happened. I just listened to that Joe and Charlie thing. Whenever I had, sponsees in the car and anything, I'm thinking about myself, playing loud music, wondering what the wife's going to say now. Things were not going well at home for me. I wasn't carrying the program into my home at all. And I took a different approach with this guy that was going to the Y. We got in the car after we put the chairs away and that, and I started telling him about the physical malady, what happens to me when I drink. And it was so quiet in the car, I thought he fell asleep. And I looked over at him, and I got a look that I can remember till this day. He was like Alfalfa in the old movies. He had the big eyes. He looked like he was absolutely amazed. And I thought, God, did I spill something? What happened? And he said, nobody's ever told me that. You're the first guy that's ever told me that. And he hooked me. I saw that spiritual hungry look in his face. And I began sponsoring him. He's 33 years sober now. I told him, I said, look, we're going to put your life on hold. It takes about 6 or 9 months. We're going to go through this book. I just gave him the AA song and dance, right? And miraculous things happened. So I needed that to happen. I want to to talk about prayer and meditation a little bit, which is really my topic. I'll talk sometimes about them, maybe individually, maybe some things I'm doing, because one of the things the steps have to do for a guy like me, and they say, and it's right, you don't have to wait to pray until you get all the way through the steps. But I believe that if I do, I've removed enough of me, and that's what the steps are doing, removing the blocks to the awareness of God, uncovering all the things that stand between me and the God that's deep down inside of me. But if I don't do that, eventually what happens, and I'm going to use a spiritual term here. I was at a out of the country workshop, and they were talking about something similar. And they said, if we don't get that poison out of us, that it's like putting icing on the shit. That's what they said. Now that was very spiritual to them, because you got to drill before you can fill. And even as my sponsor explained to me the process of the 8th step and the 9th step, I'm like, well, I didn't say it. What an order. I can't go through it. He said, look, he says, it's like a trip to the dentist. He said, we've got Novocaine here for what you're going to go through. It's called fellowship, sponsorship, home group. Remember, you're starting to have an awakening, and I was starting to see things a little different. So I think that's what has to happen. For my heart to open and to have Jesus would talk about the seeds falling on fertile soil instead of rocky soil. I had to start doing some things. And they had workshops that were going on, maybe like this one, where people were talking about prayer or meditation or other things. And I started doing that. Something else I did early on, and you don't have to do this, in fact, at all. I was Catholic. I was a long ways away from the Catholic Church. But for some reason, the idea came to me to return to the church of my childhood. And, I don't, I still didn't feel welcome at home. I didn't feel like a good father or husband. So I did AA and church. Not a bad combination, by the way. But one of the things that got me into, they raised their hand in church. It was a big Catholic church in the South Side where I grew up. Hey, we're starting something new called an adoration chapel. We take the Blessed Sacrament, which is the host, the body of Jesus, and we're going to put it in a monstrance in this little room, and we're going to have people come and sit with it for an hour at a time. Now, you know what? They're such good salespeople because they said, who would be willing to do that in the big congregation? Well, you know who made the altar call? Oh, Bobby Mack. Count me in, sign me up for some early, and I made sure everybody could hear me, of course. Maybe turned around on the way I was walking down there. I don't know, but it was a miracle. It was one of the best things that happened to me. And I was the Friday morning guy at 6 o'clock for 6 years. Every Friday morning I was there unless I was out of town. And what it did and what I ended up doing was doing a little reading maybe while I was in this chapel by myself. It was dark oftentimes when I got there. And I would call that the beginning of, for me, contemplative prayer, which is I would read something about a topic or a book from the church or something else, and then I would sit with it quietly. Sometimes I fell asleep a little bit because I was tired or whatever else, but I would call it contemplative prayer. It was kind of my beginning. Well, I became enamored with the church and everything they were doing. Anytime they had a retreat, I was there. I want to tell you about God doing for me what I can't do for myself. And that is things that I was always afraid of. I don't know if you enjoy music. I've always, because I grew up in the church and I enjoyed the old songs and them playing. When I was sitting with my mother and father, who were both alcoholics and drugged me there, I mean, they were often sleeping. And I was being entertained somewhere in here by that music. And I just loved it. I couldn't hear what the priest was saying or anything else, but that music reached me in here. Didn't know the words like most guys, right? But the music activated something in me. So this is crazy because I don't have the courage to do this. I decided to join the men's choir there. And it was a bad choir. I mean, we weren't getting the good masses, but it was a perfect place for me. And the lady that played the piano, her name was Alma. She was 80. She'd been in that church for 60 years. She said, I like your voice, Bob. Why don't you come on over? I'm going to teach you to be a cantor. And that is singing a cappella. Oh, man, you might as well told me to run through the zoo naked. I was just terrified, right? But I on the way over to Alma's house, I would ask God, here's my prayer. God, just please help me be open-minded. My sponsor taught me all of this about everything. Help me be open-minded. Help me listen to what she has to say. Just like when we go to AA, show up, pay attention, do what they say. And she taught me what to do with my voice. And I became a cantor. And I would tell you, for me, one of the only things that's better than the spoken prayer is when you sing it. They called it praying twice. And to this day, I love singing Christian music and anything holy sounding that has God reverenced, or it still reaches a place inside of me that was longing for me to do it again. And again, I don't know that I did it for the right idea, but that's what I did. That again touched off something inside of me. I started, I'm going to tell you, a lot of the things I tell you are not things you have to do. They're what I did. When it began on the search for God, or when you start to feel God or experience God, it was like ice cream for me. I mean, I'll go break into the store to get some. And what I did was about anything that involved getting closer to God, or they told me was going to, I was all in. And so I would tell you I colored outside the lines, right? One of the things they were doing, and this would have been, I don't know, the year, I don't know. But anyway, it was probably now 20 years ago. And there was a place called Medjugorje in Bosnia-Herzegovina, where in 1983, the Blessed Virgin had visited 5 children. And 3 of them were still seeing her weekly and all of that. And there was a gal in our church whose son was a priest who was taking a what do you want to say, a tour there or whatever. And so I said, hey, I'm in. It's great. And I just went. And I had another experience. I was rewarded with something. I talk about the blocks to the awareness of God. Catholic Church has a tradition called confession. The same concept as our 4th and 5th step, usually not as thorough, but I was kind of locked on to my AA then. And, recognizing, seeing some things maybe that weren't too cool about the way I acted. And I don't know if I ever told my sponsor about them, but they had this thing, and it was huge. Hundreds of thousands of people visited this place. It was an incredible experience. I won't tell you about the whole thing. If you want to know about it, call me sometime. But while there, they gave a chance for us outside with a whole bunch of priests everywhere. I mean, no confessional, nothing private, to talk to a priest about anything that was bothering us. And I had 2 things that I needed to talk to that priest about. And I had almost like an exorcism happen. I don't mean to be dramatic, but I want to tell you something changed. Why? Because I listened to the call. I responded to an opportunity. I would say for a lot of what I try to call is a heart opening. When I talk about God, I think about my soul. I think about, as AA would say, deep down inside of me. A lot of people say God is love, and I think of the heart. I've done a lot of studying about the heart as it relates to love. And I had a miraculous situation. While there, this was the other thing I noticed. While there, they had this where you climbed a mountain, this hill where they saw, and it was a terrible landscape. It was a whole rocky Yugoslavia, and everybody was there. It was huge. And what you would do is go up, and they had these 10 or 12 stations of a cross. And it was a long trek. It was about an hour-and-a-half walk. It was strenuous for me. And I guess I was in my mid-40s then. And there was a group of men there that had started, a group that had started in about 1980 or some 85 or something called Chanakalo. Look it up sometime. But we talk about prayer and meditation, talk about love and service. Dr. Bob talked about that, love and service. Now, here was their recovery program. These are all, turned out, recovering addicts and alcoholics. But what they had started to do, they prayed the rosary 3 times a day, and then they did labor the whole rest of the day. One of the things these guys did was take people who physically couldn't make the trip up the mountain, and they'd have a big chariot chair, and they would carry them up there. And one night they said, one of the guys is going to come over and tell his story. And they didn't have meetings there that I know of or anything, but it was this crazy, like me, addict from New York, heroin addict and everything else. And he talked about having an awakening, prayer and hard work. What did Bill Wilson say at the bottom of page 14? For if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual condition through self-sacrifice, helping others, they couldn't stand the trials and low spots ahead. That's still going on. It's in about 10 countries over there now. I mean, there's enough alcoholics to go around. I think if they get sober that way or lived a good purpose, and they were, I just thought it was remarkable. Something happened for me there too. One of the other things that happened, and I just want to talk about some of the tools that have helped me. I don't know if I can get my hands on it or not. Yep. I got a friend of mine, he got sober the same year I did, had got permission from the Catholic Church. One of the things that was big was the rosary as a prayer vehicle. Don't know if you've ever seen it. You don't have to be Catholic to pray it, by the way. It's just a rosary where you pray some prayers. He wrote this book called The Healing Rosary. He got it approved. It actually went all the way to Rome to have it approved because he did his own mysteries. They were about the healing mysteries. And this is the most powerful. This book was just my go-to. If you're Catholic or interested in the rosary, it's an incredible book. It's called The Healing Rosary. Hard to get now. I don't even know if it's in print anymore. But if you're looking for something to improve your prayer and meditation, this is prayer. And then the way the rosary works, you sit with it. Or they'd have reading here that they would recommend. A couple things that I feel like reading to you, but I won't because I'm 30 minutes in. Let me fast forward a little bit. I want to say that a lot of what began to happen, I began to pay attention to, was this longing. I had had a spiritual awakening. I was continuing to see the world differently. I ended up, my marriage ended at 2 years sober. If I was my wife, I would have divorced me too. But over the period of the next 2 or 3 years, all those daughters who I didn't pay any attention to came to live with me. And I got to be the father I always wanted to. But I did that, and we hustled them all over the state with dance and music and all of that, and still went to 6 or 8 meetings a week and sponsored 20 guys. We can do it all. I just can't do it all and watch Hogan's Heroes reruns. I want to keep the main thing. And I hope that didn't sound too proud. I'm just telling you, what that did was had me moving forward toward this spiritual awakening. And so I just became open to it. I was going down to Florida at that time. My sister was dying. I felt called to go be with her, and I was afraid of death. But I would go down there every month, and my niece said, "Hey, I'm dating a new guy, and we go to this AA meeting at a clubhouse in St. Pete. Would you come down?" And I said, "Yeah, oh, okay, And she dated some guys like me, and I went down there. He didn't show up, of course. First of all, I did what I was supposed to. But after that AA meeting, there was a guy there who's a long timer then, a long timer now. He was doing a book study on a book called The Sermon on the Mount. And I'd heard of it. I think I got a copy of it when I was a year sober. I might as well have been reading hieroglyphics. It just, none of it made any sense to me. And by this time, by the way, I wasn't going to the Catholic Church anymore. Nothing wrong with the Catholic Church. I adore it, revere it. I just wasn't going anymore. But man, I'm telling you what, it was all I could do to get there every week on Sunday morning. And that guy opened up that book to me, Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, and I learned more about, and that book was kind of irreverent toward churches, by the way. Old Emmett Fox was kind of the Billy Graham with a fist in the air. He didn't like church. Well, he called churches out. Anyway, I had a great experience. I was in the room every week. Eventually, my mentor, Don, gave up doing that after about 8 or 9 years, and a gal came in from behind him and started doing it. And she said, "Hey, we're not going to do this book anymore. We're going to do another one." I wanted to throw her out the window, spiritually, of course. And she said, "There's another book," she said, "some of us have been enjoying, called A Course in Miracles." I'd never heard of it. And I find that many of us are finding some kind of a spiritual path or spiritually hungry, trying to perfect and enlarge our spiritual condition. And I began attending that. And I still study the daily lessons of that every day. It's one of my spiritual practices. And I know it has helped me broaden and deepen this relationship. I would call it a sense of prayer, a sense of removing the blocks, and then you sit with the reading. So it's a kind of a meditative thing. I want to talk about meditation a little bit and kind of wind up on that some. And I'm going to mention a few other things that if you want to know more about them, you can ask in the questions, or my phone numbers. I'm glad to talk to you about any of it. But because I have an incredible life. When I took the steps the first time with my sponsor, I did an imperfect 4th and 5th step. If you're sitting on one, did the best I could. It was very shallow. And went upstairs and did everything he said. When I did the 7-step prayer, I got off my knees and I walked down the stairs at that retreat. It was 34 years ago. Remember it like it was yesterday. I could not wipe the smile off my face. I have not been able to wipe the smile off my face since. The process of the steps are beyond humanly possible. They're divinely inspired for guys like me. But I was drawn to meditation. Somebody talked about the St. Francis prayer. And when I was 2 years sober, my marriage ended. And I was real happy about it for about a week and a half when I moved out. I'd never done my own laundry. I didn't know what to put in the refrigerator. I didn't know anything. And my kids were living across the side of town. And I was just grief-stricken, absolutely grief-stricken. And I came to a point about, I don't know, a month later when I couldn't sleep, because I would take the kids home on Tuesday night. There was a car in the driveway. My kids said that's mom's boyfriend. And I was just devastated. My cookie crumbled. I just couldn't imagine it, couldn't see it. And I started having these just destructive thoughts about breaking through the window at night and killing him. And I just was insane, literally insane. And I called a friend of mine. I hadn't slept for 3 nights, and called this long timer, Dick Farrell. And he said, I'm glad you called. He'd been married 16 times. And he said, I know how you feel 16 times. He says, here's what helped me. He said, I want you to open, Calvin was given the pages earlier. I want you to open to page 99. And I hadn't plumbed much of a 12 and 12. In fact, I talked badly about it regularly. I thought, no, it's a big book. What are you doing that 12 and 12? Anyway, he said, go to the part where it says, I use a prayer like this. And it made the suggestion to imagine you're on a sunlit beach and reread the prayer. And I had something happen for me. I fell asleep that night. That is a very comforting prayer. It was way beyond what I thought I could do to love, comfort, and understand rather than be loved, comforted, or understood. But I lacked the power necessary to do that. Lack of power has always been my dilemma. I've had good ideas and things that sounded pretty rich spiritually. That book has been extremely helpful to me ever since. Sermon on the Mount and our 12 and 12. Let's see. I want to wrap up here the last 5 minutes or so with a couple things. One, meditation, and I want to maybe come at that last. I've been doing parts of it, I would say, get quiet a little bit. Then I determined I'm really going to get after it. Now I'm going to do 5 minutes every morning, and that would last for 3 days. And I got a chance to, I had a guy that I hosted as a speaker in 1989 who's been like a father to me. He still is. I talked to him 3 days ago. He's 91 years old, 67 years sober. He had started a men's meditation group in Seattle. I would go up every year for his sobriety birthday. And I said, hey, well, maybe when I'm in town, I could attend your meditation group. He says, oh, no. He says, it's not something you just pop in and out of. We ask guys to be committed to it. And I kind of sunk. But it was 10 or 12 of them that got together the first Monday of every month. Well, fast forward to the Zoom. And a lot of things shut down, didn't it? This is where God's grace opened a window for me again. And I'm in touch with these guys and everything else. And my friend Ralph, who I talk to weekly, said, well, we're doing that thing on Zoom. I don't like that. It's kind of clumsy. And he was 88 years old at the time, right? And but it let me in the door on the Zoom meeting. And that Zoom meeting was a Step 11 meeting. And here are guys ranging from 65 years sober. I was the new kid on the block with 32 years. Every week, the first Monday of the month, they would come online, and I got to be a part of that. And it stepped up my meditation game. That's all I can tell you. I'd been in the desert. I don't mind telling you that. I know what it's like to be in the desert with meditation, but it stepped up my game on that. And eventually, Zoom kind of went away. And I was led, and I talked to my sponsor about it. I started going to Seattle every month on the first Monday of the month to be in person with that group. I call it a gathering of eagles, or maybe I used to say a gathering of the Cardinals with our Pope, Ralph, who was such an inspiration still to me. And we would talk about our practice of prayer and meditation. And there were a couple, 3 guys in the group that talked about having taken a class together on something called Transcendental Meditation, TM. I'd never heard of it. Interesting that I would have never heard of it. The worldwide capital, the Institute for Meditation and TM, is in Iowa, 2 hours south of where I live. I mean, it's a campus. There's thousands of people there. And he said, we took the class. And I said, well, I'm doing okay. And gave me this guy to listen to in the morning. And I'd listen to that. And I signed up for TM lessons earlier this year. I just want to tell you this. That's terrible if I was to say I'm willing to go to any lengths. I'm willing to grow. I want to grow in understanding and effectiveness. I'm not starving anymore, but I want that beautiful experience. And I took the training. It was not convenient. It was not inexpensive. And that was about 2.5 months ago. And I have a different meditation practice today. I'm not a show off. I don't tell people about this other than this is the topic here. And it was just a totally different experience for me. I don't know why. I don't know why TM is different than regular meditation, but they gave us some things to do, and that's been huge for me. One last thing I want to talk about. The man that did the Sermon on the Mount study in St. Petersburg, his name's Don. I talked to him today, one of my mentors. He's in his late 80s and his health's not good. He introduced me he was always he was still an AA guy, just didn't go to as much AA anymore. But he was under the influence of the idea that change your thinking, change your world. Change your thinking, change the way you see the world. And he said, I love the 12 steps. They're wonderful. And I had been to a Costa Rica, beautiful Costa Rica retreat where they have a 6-step process called Choose Again, which is about your thinking and your mind and your old belief system. Fabulous. I recommend it to anybody. I had several friends that have gone. However, Don said, you don't need a 6-step process. You need a 2-step process. And this is part of my 10th step, I would say now, which would then get me to the 11th step. Is he would say, be happy. And he had this card he did. It was called the Be Happy bookmark. He said, not as big as a lot of them, but he said it was real simple. And here's how it goes. Enjoying all that I am is the most important thing for me and others. I enjoy all that I am when I enjoy the thought I am thinking. Here's the question. Am I enjoying the thought I'm thinking right now? Yes or no? You ever been disturbed? Have some thought you can't get out of your head besides breaking in your ex-wife's window with a brick? I mean, just the stuff like how much they charge you at the grocery store, whatever, right? Have you ever been disturbed? Here's the way you get undisturbed. If no, then I consciously choose what I most enjoy thinking. And that's one of my practices today. He had me start to make a list of the thoughts I most enjoy thinking. I've got 5 pages of them. And they're kind of my spiritual go-to. They're like a wealth of spiritual tools. Some of, if you hear something a speaker say, or something you see in a poem or a book, that it's a quick read, 2 or 3 sentences that reminds you, I would say, to get back to heaven, because I've stepped out of heaven. And when I'm not enjoying my thoughts, I'm in hell. And I don't like to go to hell alone. I don't like to suffer alone. But I want to live free. And I've kind of touched on a lot of things and missed some things I thought I might say. But I really, really love Alcoholics Anonymous. I love the 11th step. I promise to keep vigilant on prayer and meditation. I love when we get the opportunity, as we did for Bernadette, to pray for other people. I'll just end by saying thank you. Teresa, thank you very much. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rosina. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you so much, Bob. It was really beautiful listening to you again. And I actually want to ask you, if you don't mind. My sponsee called, and I had to respond to her. But I missed the bit where you had that moment with your sponsee. First of all, this is like a white light experience for me listening to you. Thank you for giving us the tools. Thank you for giving us your experience. In the throes of the disease, we are just we are dead, and the lengths that we will go to is just heinous, and it's just scary that we can do a 180 and be in God's light and love, and to have this life is such a gift. And I just want to say thank you for taking us on this beautiful journey. And like I said, I just missed that part where you looked into your sponsee's eyes. Could you just give me that just a couple seconds before?
Yeah, maybe it was the guy that when I was going to the clubhouse, right? And that guy, he wasn't a sponsee at the time. Is that the guy I needed a ride home?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, I don't mind telling that story. I mean, I just keep reliving what some of us need for a hook. And I had just, I had just, finished learning how to do a 12-step call when Joe and Charlie, who used to go around the country and talk about what to do, we were talking about what Bill did when he went and saw Dr. Bob. And what Dr. Silkworth said, he says, quit trying to shove that spiritual experience down their throats. He said, give them the hard medical facts. Tell them what happens to you when you drink. And that was ringing in my ears, even beyond I was inconvenienced to take him back, and I just gave him the hard medical facts. I started telling him, well, it was good to see you tonight. I just went into it, and he did. It was so incredible because the car, I didn't like silence. That's why I'd always have the radio on. I just couldn't stand my own thoughts, to be honest with you. And I looked over at him and he had these huge eyes. He just looked like a guy that had, I don't know, probably the same way I was when I'd say the way I had that happen to me was my sponsor explained the doctor's opinion to me. It explained so many things to me about the obsession and what happened when I drank. And I was saying that to this guy, Don, through my own experience. He was living at the Y. Not long after that, he marched through the steps. He had never been through the steps again. He'd been to AA many times in Arizona where he was a street person. And I just got to tell you this about it though. This guy is lost. He's lost in the wilderness of alcoholism. And I sponsored him through the steps. He ended up going to Drake University and getting in the music department because you know what? He was he was a renowned all-world accordion player who had lost his gift. He started helping one of the music people there with music and got back into his gift. He's 33 and some years sober now. I got to tell you this story, but 12 years ago, a group of us, 20 years ago now, pardon me, 2001, a group of us, we like to go skiing, us guys go have fellowship fun. We went out to Salt Lake City to go ski, and Don was on that trip. There were 8 of us, and I had encouraged him to do a little more fellowship. So we get out there, and this is after 9/11 had happened before, right? And so it was late 2001, early 2002, the Olympics were going to be there. And so there was nobody there. We were having a good time in that. We decided to go tour in the city. We went to the where the tabernacle, Mormon tabernacle is, that big church, huge church. Turned out Don had called there before and had somebody follow up and call them. They let him play the organ at the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. The guy that let us in said, I don't know how you got in here. I'm not sure how the guy called and we called. His sobriety now, he got to go in and he played, and I love music. He played an unbelievable, his hands were everywhere. The pipes are everywhere and this place is massive, but sobriety, a gift, and in some small way, just like Bill said, I kind of help light the fuse. And yeah, thanks for asking about that. God, I've been so fortunate to see those kind of things happen. Thank you for asking.
And thank you as well. I just wanted to mention the healing rosary reference. My mom passed away a month ago, and we get to do a celebration mass for her and using the rosary, and it's like a prayer, a devotional. And I came from Roman Catholic faith, but I lost that, and now my mom, she went through long illness, and I get to be present for that, and really just be with her and to be sober. What a gift that's been. And now to hear you talk about this and me looking forward to this mass is going to happen, and to know that I was there and that she's still with me and that I get to connect with her in a whole entire way because of this program. So I'm just really grateful, and thank you for what you shared tonight. I'm really blessed. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that. What a gift to get to be there. Yeah, and belong there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question. Calvin, please come up, unmute yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Calvin. I'm still an alcoholic. Bob, thank you for a good message, really strong. And I really love that, the things that you shared tonight, touched me, but I was just thinking really fast, and I'm going to get on out of the way, I was just thinking that about an hour before I got on this meeting, Bernadette's husband called me, and me and him had a conversation. And Bernadette's probably the most spiritual person I've met in my life, right?
Mm.
And that's why I followed around. Me and her got sober together 37 years ago, and it's amazing. And the more that her body would break down because she had MS, the stronger her spirit got. And her husband was telling me today. He said, Calvin, if I could only have the faith that Bernadette has. He said, I never had that kind of faith. I said, neither did I. So that's why I followed her around me, And he said, she's not scared to die. She's not scared to die. And she said, if you ever heard her, she always talked about sitting in God's lap. Sitting in God's lap. When I see people that have been transformed like that inside this program, and her husband, and you can see how he's been affected, and he's stuck right there in her with her all the ride, and it's been a rough ride. So I just wanted to just say that about my friend, So no matter how this thing spins out, that it's amazing what we do. And Bob, you talked about it perfectly. The friends we make along this journey, and there's people who touch us spiritually, are amazing. And you're one of them people. So thank you so much, Bobby.
Yeah, you touch a lot of them too. I love you, Calvin. Thank you.
Thank you, Calvin. Sarah P., please mute yourself.
Hi, good evening. I am Sarah, a alcoholic.
I see.
Thank you so much, Bob, for your lead. I have two things. One was you mentioned a book regarding the rosary, and I think you said it might be out of print, but what is the name of that?
It's called The Healing Rosary. That's probably backwards there in the camera. And it's by Mike D. Still sober. And yeah, it's been around a while. I went to try to order some because oftentimes one of the things I do is some of the people I admire in the program, I interview 4 men and 4 women a year about their spiritual practices. People I see around the program or whatever else, I want to learn what they're doing. I mean, what's keeping your spiritual tank full? What's the wind beneath your wings? And some of them are Catholic. And when they are, I give them this book. This is the last copy I've got right now. I just looked on about a week ago and saw where there were a couple of used copies left, but I'm saying it was out of print, and that's because I couldn't find that anywhere. But anyway, I hope you can find it, Sarah, and pick it. I've been praying. I prayed the rosary for a long time when I found that, and it was so good. I can still see myself reading it, standing outside a Subway one time. I was reading it when I was in New York doing something. I was just so taken by it. I hope you enjoy it too.
Thank you. And then my other question, I didn't catch Bernadette. Has she passed? Or is she very ill?
She's
What's-
she's on life support, man. Oh, go ahead, Calvin.
No, she's on life support. And she's usually, if she wasn't, she would have been in this meeting tonight. And that's why Ray asked me to tell everyone here where she was at in this and what's going on with her. Because she knows she loved this group. So thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Yes, she'll be in my prayers.
Thank you, Sarah. Michelle put in the text that the book is for sale on eBay. Okay, thank you. Nathan D., please come up and unmute yourself.
Nathan, alcoholic. Thanks, Bob, for your message. So, Bob, I don't know if you know, if you remember me, a couple years ago, I used to attend the Rojo group with you and Calvin, and used to pop in there every once in a while and in the mornings. And I, in my early sobriety, you reached out to me when very few people were. And I just want you to know how much that meant to me. Today is my 2-year anniversary.
Oh, God.
So and you're a big part of that for me. So thank you. So I'm interested in the TM piece of your talk, and especially just wondering if you could talk about that a little bit more. About, you mentioned that place just south of Des Moines that you were that teaches it. If you have any insights into how you practice, if it's like an early morning thing, or
Thank you.
any more details on that, that'd be
Yeah, I'll
great.
just mention a couple things and then feel free to grab my phone number, Nathan, and we can, any other questions about it, I'd be happy to tell you. Just my experience, right? Because I'd tried a lot of meditation and I still don't know why it's different. So it's called the Maharishi Institute. It's down in Fairfield, Iowa. I knew it was down there, but I thought they levitated and roamed around on rugs out in the air. And I mean, I made fun of that place. I don't mind telling you that. If I don't understand something, I make fun of it. Not anymore. And I thought it was woo-woo. Well, my friends were the experience, right? And these are guys that I trusted, and they said that was a good experience for them. So it's a class you can take, depending, where do you live at, Nathan?
I'm in Minneapolis.
Yeah, oh, I know you can find a TM teacher up there. So they're everywhere. I was going to take a class down here in Sarasota, and because of COVID, this would have been last year in the spring, there was a big outbreak in Philadelphia, and the teachers that were down here all went there to work with to teach TM technique to people that were working 25 hours a day. You know what I mean? The people that were overwhelmed in the hospitals and stuff, because it's an incredible practice. The practice is twice a day is what they recommend. I have not missed twice a day since, 20 minutes each time. And they take you, mine, and I saw all of them do, a 4-day process, a couple hours a day. And I don't know why it works that good. I've had a totally different experience with it. So I mention it in case anybody's never tried meditation. Try anything you want, right? I mean, it's like my sponsor used to say. He said, Bob, meditation's not extra credit. I'd say, well, I'm praying and I pray a lot and I read a lot. He says, meditation's not extra credit. I love that. So anyway, if you Googled it though in your area, Nathan, I know they're up there. And thanks for sharing your 2 years, man. That touched me. Yeah, God bless you. I hope you'll come back and join us at Rojo. Calvin and I are holding the light on for you.
7 a.m. I gotta change my schedule. I gotta get up.
8 a.m. on Saturday, 9 a.m. on Sunday. Anyway, thanks again. Thanks again. That was beautiful. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Nathan.
Feel free to call.
Oh, okay.
That's
Rob from New York, please unmute yourself.
Thank you so much, Rob, grateful alcoholic, and by the grace of God, I'm so today. Bob, thank you so much for a very powerful share. Just beautiful. Absolutely. You touch my heart.
Oh,
and I just admire your sobriety, and you are a beautiful man, your soul, your heart, because of God in your life. And because of God in my life, we are transformed. I am transformed. I have been transformed. And I'm a different person. I view life differently today than I did some years ago. You know, I'm Jewish, and early on in sobriety, I was introduced to another member to a Black Baptist church. And I attended that for about, 8 or 9 years until COVID hit. And that experience, that music, enhanced my relationship with my higher power and increased my relationship with my higher power to such a great extent. And my spiritual practice today, a great majority of my day is spent 3-4 hours listening to spiritual music, like you were talking about.
I love it.
Gospel music I listen to. The words And I think you know what I'm talking about, don't you, my brother? Um, and I can never get enough of it. And I've been doing it for quite a few years now. And that keeps me so close to my God. And I'm so blessed that I am able to have that feeling of that music in my heart. Never gets old, never gets old. And I just want to thank you again. And I guess my only question really is with regard to meditation. I've done meditation over the years. I do it sporadically. I know there's no right or wrong way of doing it, but I just don't have the feeling in my heart, perhaps, or my head for it. But I'm going to continue to do it periodically, I suppose, until one day maybe I do it on a regular basis. But that's kind of where I'm at, and I don't know if what I can really do to enhance that practice. But I guess perhaps just practice makes perfect. I don't know. Anyway, thank you so much for an amazing
Thank you for your kind words, friend. Thank you.
11-step share.
God bless you. Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Meg Q, please unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Meg. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you, Bob, for your share. This is my first time on this meeting. My sponsor had recommended it, and so I'm glad that I showed up tonight. I've been a little bit, well, very much so homebound for the past week and a half because I, like your daughter, Bob, I just had my first baby, which no doubt is a gift and is super challenging and a whirlwind. So anyway, that's just an aside. My question for you is, you mentioned, you were talking towards the end about, do I like the thought I'm thinking right now? And how you were advised to whatever, you have 5 pages of basically good thoughts. So I immediately compare myself to you and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even know if I have, what's one thought that I like thinking? How do I get a couple, let alone a page? And so I was just wondering if you could speak more to that practice in your life and how, I don't know, maybe it's a personal venture, but how do you figure out those thoughts that you like? Thank you.
And thank you. And congratulations, by the way. What's your baby's name?
Her name's Pema.
Oh, Pema. Oh, I think I'd change my name to that tomorrow if I can get away with it. Love that. Anyway, so I was drawn to it by a guy that was doing it, right? And Don said to me, and like you, what do you mean, Don? And he had this practice though. Are you enjoying the thought you're thinking? Then stop. You've stepped out of heaven. I'm suffering. And he said, time to get back into heaven. What thought would you enjoy the most? And so some of it for me became something I hear somebody say at a meeting that, oh, I love that or whatever. I'd write it down. With my phone, it's real easy today. When I'm somewhere, hear something, anywhere, I've got a little note thing here, and I'm not real phone savvy, but I can put notes in there. Some of them I put over on my list. And I didn't start with 5 pages, though. Don sent me the 2 pages he had about 10 years ago. And I knew what he meant. Some of them are doorsteps to an experience based on the statement. I mean, it's a short version of the statement. And so it just reminds me to enjoy, I want to enjoy those thoughts so I can enjoy what's going on outside. That means spiritual enthusiasm. EN means enthusiasm, comes from within. And he sent me a couple pages, I'm happy to send you. Some of them might not make sense to you, but give you an idea. You know what I mean? Yeah, I don't know how if you want to get my call, if you get my phone and text me, tell me what an email is, and I'll send you a couple. I'll send them all to you. It doesn't matter. They aren't copyrighted, and they never will be.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it.
God bless you.
Thank you, Meg. Michelle P., please unmute yourself.
Hi, excuse me. Hi, my name is Michelle. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you, Bob, so much. I find myself really drawn to a lot of spiritual books over the years, and I love Emma Fox, Sermon on the Mount. And I had a book, My Higher Ego, my Ego, My Higher Power, and I at one time, and I also read The Road Less Traveled, and there was a little group of books. It was like 4 little ones. What would the master do? But this new book that you just mentioned, I immediately went on. I typed it in Google, and it came up on eBay for $4.09. I'm raised Protestant.
Yeah.
But I've always been fascinated. My mother-in-law was a very Catholic, wonderful woman. And when I was really, really drunk, I asked her to teach me the rosaries, which was really a great time to ask her to teach me the rosaries. I don't remember anything about it, but I did also order some rosary beads, because I think that openness to my higher power, that openness to the sunlight of the spirit, needs all kinds of information. And it helps me to form this connection with my higher power in a way that I just can't even describe it, actually. And I lost my husband December 1st, and 50 years of marriage. And when you were saying, when bad things, when life happens and tragedies happen, and and the thing I'm so grateful for this program. I'm sober 48 years, but the thing I'm most grateful for is that it was December 1st, and we had a very cold snap in Pennsylvania, and I'm outside on my deck at 6 degrees at night, looking at the stars and the moon, and being so grateful to God for the beauty he's created in this world. And knowing my husband, the love I had and the years I had with him, and feeling very grateful, very, very grateful in the sense of tragedy, in the moment of tragedy, that we can feel gratitude in our hearts. So thank you so much. And I'm so glad you pointed me to this. I can't wait now to get it. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And my condolences to your losing your pal. And thank you. I wanted to say one other thing on that too. That Sermon on the Mount, some people may or may not know it. One of the things, the way I got started in that book, in the back of it is the Lord's Prayer. And that is the way for me, it became the way for me to read that book, because I said the Lord's Prayer at all the meetings. And there, Emmett Fox has some wonderful things on the Lord's Prayer. And those are the kind of books I've sought out, is books that have some communication about one of our prayers. One other one I'd mention, again, I won't bore you with my whole list. One of my other powerful books is There's a Spiritual Solution to Every Problem. And the reason I recommend that book, in here, Dr. Wayne Dyer goes through the St. Francis prayer. It is a powerful book, even if you just read that part of it. This is one of my go-tos as well. So I've got a lot of other ones. I don't mean to get off on that tangent, but and I'm not a great reader. I have friends who are voracious readers. I am a spiritually hungry guy. I like to keep that enthusiasm up so I can pray outside my daughter's door last week. Thank you, God, for my daughter's health. Thank you for Grant's health. Thank you for the nurses that came in here, and for those prayers of thanksgiving. And thank you. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle. And thank you, Bob. That concludes our question period for the meeting, and I'll now pass it back to Teresa. Teresa?